Okay, so hi, welcome again. Welcome to our second lesson on control freaks. Remember from our last lesson, we asked ourselves, who are the control freaks mentioned in the title? כן, מי אותם חולי שליטה שמוזכרים בכותרת? ומתוך הקדם קריאה שלנו לא היה לנו מספיק מידע כדי לענות על השאלה הזאת. Okay? So to try and get more information and try and answer this question, okay, we will skim the text. Now, when I say skimming the text, אנחנו נקרא חלקים מהטקסט, החלקים היותר מרכזיים, כדי לנסות לענות על השאלה באמת, מה הנושא של הטקסט שלנו. Okay, so we're going to be reading the first part of the introduction, paragraphs 1 till 3, and the last paragraph, the conclusion, paragraph 15. Okay? We're also going to be looking at the use of an anecdote at the beginning of the text. כי אנחנו נסתכל על השימוש בסיפור קצר בתחילת הטקסט. עכשיו, זו לא פעם ראשונה שאנחנו מסתכלים על השימוש שכותבים עושים באיזשהו סיפור כדי להציג את הנושא של הטקסט. אנחנו נסתכל שוב פעם על כיצד הכותבים עושים את זה, ובשביל איזו מטרה. And we're also going to look at the use of positive and negative vocabulary, כן? Looking at the types of words, האם הכותבים משתמשים במילים חיוביות או שליליות, וזה כמובן נותן לנו המון מידע לגבי עמדת הכותב. And we're also going to be looking at a short video clip about scientific research. Okay, so let's look at the first two paragraphs of our text. And what I want you to do is I want you to focus on the following question, okay? What idea is illustrated by the anecdote in paragraph 1? Okay, זה גם כן מבנה של שאלה שאתם כבר מכירים, אני מקווה. כן, איזה רעיון מומחש על ידי הסיפור בפסקה הראשונה? Okay, כלומר, איזה רעיון מרכזי הכותבים מנסים להעביר לי על ידי הסיפור הזה? כן, מה המסר שלהם? So in order to answer this question, I want you to complete the following sentence. כן, השלימו את המשפט הבא. The idea that the writer is trying to show is that the psychiatrist's conclusion is that, and we're going to pause here and look for the answer. Okay, so how are you supposed to start answering this question? What you should have done is read the anecdote in the first paragraph. כן, לקרוא את הסיפור בפסקה הראשונה. Now, if you noticed, the first paragraph is pretty difficult. They're talking about prisoners of war, כן? הם מדברים על שבויי מלחמה. ולא כל מילה, אני בטוחה, ברורה לחלוטין, אבל אפשר להבין שמתארים איזשהו מצב ששבויי המלחמה חוזרים הביתה, והם אפתיים, הם לא מראים רגשות. Okay, so even if you didn't understand each and every word, that should be what you understood from the first paragraph. Now we're looking for, okay, so what is the writer's point? בשביל מה הביא את הסיפור הזה? וגם כן אנחנו יודעים שאנחנו נחפש אחרי הסיפור כדי לראות מה הכותבים מנסים להדגיש או להמחיש לנו על ידי הסיפור הזה. So paragraph 2 begins with the words these men, האנשים האלה, כלומר זה קישור לפסקה הראשונה. איזה אנשים כמובן? שבויי המלחמה, the prisoners of war. So what is the writer saying about the prisoners of war? Okay, what the writer is saying that psychiatrists concluded, כן, הפסיכיאטרים הגיעו למסקנה, that they had suffered a stunting mental shock in captivity in the extreme environment of a POW camp. Their minds had been altered. So what the writer is saying here is that this is an example of a story where a person's mind has been changed. כן? זה מתאר מצב שבו המוח של אותו אדם עבר איזשהו שינוי. The word alter means changed. Okay, so the answer should be that the idea is to show the psychiatrist's conclusion that the human mind can be altered. So remember that the purpose of an anecdote or short story is that, again, the writers begin the text with some sort of story to, in a nice way, introduce the topic of their text. Okay, so now we're going to look also at a different way of answering the same question. Now, remember that the question was, what idea is illustrated by the anecdote in paragraph 1, כן? איזה רעיון מומחש על ידי הסיפור בפסקה הראשונה. And if you look at paragraph 3, okay, so I want everybody to look at paragraph 3, and I want you to read the first sentence of paragraph 3. Okay? So if you notice, the subject of the first sentence of paragraph 3, again, is the psychiatrists, הפסיכיאטרים. Okay? So what are the psychiatrists pointing out, or what conclusion did they get to? Okay? They got to a conclusion that if a human brain could be re-engineered in a bad way by torture and trauma, maybe it could be re-engineered in a good way in a controlled physical environment. So you could also say that the idea that the writer is trying to show in the story of the POWs coming home and not showing any emotions is that the writer is trying to emphasize that the brain can be changed in a bad way by torture and trauma. So if I answered from paragraph 2 or from the beginning of paragraph 3, the bottom line is that the stories are showing us that the human mind can be changed. כן, שאפשר לשנות את המוח האנושי. Now let's look at question number 2. Question number 2 says, who is trying to change the brain? כן, מי מנסה לשנות את המוח? And of course, again, to answer this type of a question, look for the subject of the sentence. מי או מה הנושאים של המשפט. So we're going to pause here for a second and again look for the answer to this question. And of course the answer is the psychiatrist. כן? הפסיכיאטרים הם אלה שמנסים להנדס מחדש או לשנות את המוח האנושי. Okay, so let's read the first part again of the last paragraph, paragraph 15. כן, עכשיו אנחנו עוברים מהמבוא למסקנות, לפסקה 15. And based on what you have read so far, let's try and answer the following question. כן, תזכרו שכל שאלה נוספת שמופיעה, היא צריכה להיבנות על מה שאנחנו כבר יודעים לגבי הטקסט, ואנחנו כל הזמן מנסים לגלות מידע חדש. So now we're going to try and answer the golden question, who are the control freaks? כן, מי הם אותם חולי שליטה שמופיעים בכותרת? So read the last paragraph and think about what can be the answer. So paragraph 15 is only one sentence, and we have a lot of words that might not be familiar to you, but let's go over this together slowly and let's see what the answer could be. So as for today, כן, as for, זה ביטוי שאומר לגבי. As for today's white lab coat types, כן? עכשיו, מה זה white lab coat types? אותם האנשים שלובשים חלוק לבן. המילה lab פה זה קיצור של laboratory, מעבדה. אז הנושא של המשפט הזה לגבי אותם האנשים שלובשים חלוק לבן, who are trying to reshape the brain through drugs and neuroscience. Now, these people in the white lab coats are trying to reshape or change the brain through drug and science. Now, I have to ask myself, okay, so who is trying to reshape the brain through drugs and science? Who are the same people that are wearing these white coats? And of course, my answer should be the scientists, כן, המדענים. וזה גם מתווסף לכל מה שקראנו עד לנקודה הזאת, שהזכירו פה פסיכיאטרים, פסיכולוגים, וכמובן אנשים שמנסים לשנות את המוח דרך תרופות ומדע. So the answer is, we know that the control freaks are those doctors, psychiatrists, researchers, and scientists. So now let's read the last part of the last paragraphs. כן, אנחנו ניקח עכשיו את החלק השני של הפסקה האחרונה, and I want you to focus on the following question. How was David Brooks affected by Lemov's book. So read the last paragraph, think about the question, and we're going to pause and try and answer. So let's look at the answer. Okay, so we'll read paragraph 15 together. As for today's white lab coat types, who are trying to reshape the brain through drugs and neuroscience, Lemov has me, well, not me, but the reviewer Brooks, looking at them, the white lab coat types, that means the scientists, the psychiatrists, in a new and much more skeptical way. So, as an answer, the book caused Brooks to look at scientists in a new and much more skeptical way. Now, if the writer is looking at a certain field in a new and skeptical way, this is something positive actually. כן, אם הכותב, בגלל שהוא קרא את הספר שלה, חושב על הנושא בצורה חדשה, והוא מסתכל על זה בצורה יותר סקפטית, כלומר, הוא מטיל ספק בדברים שנאמרו שם, okay, this is actually saying that he likes the book, הוא דווקא אוהב את הספר, כי הספר הזה גרם לו לחשוב ולפקפק על משהו שעד עכשיו הוא קיבל כמובן מאליו. ומבחינה אקדמית זה דבר חיובי לבקר ולשאול שאלות ולהטיל ספק בדברים מסוימים. And as I said before, even if the word skeptical in Hebrew is used in a negative way, in our text here, it's actually very, very positive. So this tells us that the writer likes what Lemov was describing in her book. Now, because we're going to read about control freaks, or because we're going to be reading about scientists that have conducted questionable experiments, okay, and especially experiments in which they tried to change the human mind, we're going to have a lot of words that have positive meanings and have negative meanings. So what we're going to do right now is I want you to look at this list of words and decide if they are positive or negative, and do this as quickly as you can and try and see how many words you already know. Okay, so let's go over the answers together. So the positive words were endorsed, תמך, תמיכה, בעיקר זו תמיכה כלכלית הרבה פעמים. The word thrive, לשגשג, is positive. headache free. עכשיו, כשכתוב לכם free, אתם יודעים שזה בחינם. זו מילה מאוד מאוד שימושית וכולנו מכירים אותה. אבל באנגלית, שהיא מחוברת למילה אחרת, הכוונה ללא. כן? כמו sugar free, ללא סוכר. Okay, so headache free actually means ללא כאבי ראש, and of course that is a positive thing. Remember this word because we're going to come back to it and we're going to see it in the text also. The word cured, cured זה לרפא, so of course it's positive. And common good, טובת הכלל, of course it is a positive word. So now let's look at the negative words. Okay, the negative words, deprivation. Deprivation זה חסך. The word disoriented. Disoriented means מבולבל. So of course it doesn't have a positive meaning. The words impaired memory. פגיעה בזיכרון. פגיעה בזיכרון of course is something negative. We also have the word nightmarish. So if you know the word nightmare, nightmarish describes a situation. זה מתאר מצב, זה בעצם סיוטי. So if something is nightmarish, it's not positive, of course. And the last word, the word frustration, תסכול, and again is a negative word. So let's sum up what we did right now. Okay. So we looked at how the writer uses an anecdote to introduce the topic. and הסתכלנו כיצד הכותב שוב פעם משתמש בסיפור כדי להציג את הנושא. We discovered that the control freaks are scientists. So we know that the text is going to talk about scientists who conducted experiments. כן? אותם חולי שליטה זה המדענים שערכו ניסויים במקרה הזה כדי לנסות לשנות את המוח האנושי. We also know that the writer likes Lemov's book. כן, אנחנו יודעים שדייוויד ברוקס אוהב את הספר של אמוב, כי זה כמובן גרם לו לחשוב על הנושא שהיא מספרת בספר שלה בצורה חדשה. And we also know that we're going to be seeing a lot of positive and negative vocabulary. And what we're going to do now is I want you to look at the following video, the short clip that describes some pretty crazy experiments conducted in the name of science by certain scientists.
Weight of the soul. Dr. Duncan McDougall claimed that the human soul does exist. He studied 6 people as they died and noted a loss of 21 grams of weight afterward. He asserted that this was proof of the human soul leaving the body. The homunculus. Paracelsus was a physician in the 1500s who set out to create a mini-human by implanting a human egg in a horse womb and feeding it human blood. Fortunately, his experiment was never a success. Elephants on acid. In 1962, a group of researchers dosed Tusco the elephant with 297 milligrams of LSD. They hoped to induce a temporary rage that male elephants can experience. Unfortunately, Tusco keeled over dead and could not be revived. Reanimated corpse. Dr. Robert E. Cornish brought 2 dogs back from the dead with a teeter system. An inmate volunteered to be his first human subject after his execution, but the courts were concerned with double jeopardy and denied the request. Prison experiment. In 1971, Professor Zimbardo set up a mock prison at Stanford University, with mentally healthy people chosen to play the guards and prisoners. The experiment was shut down 6 days after starting due to prisoner abuse. Ape and child. Dr. Kellogg wondered if a chimp raised by humans would act human. He raised a chimp baby alongside his own son and treated them the same. The chimp did perform better than the baby, except when it came to language.